definitely didn't get a good jump.
Fastball, strike 3 called. Wasn't up. And Lindor takes strike 3 called. Cutter outside corner to charge against the speed of Bader, and he boots it.
Strike 3. LeMahieu down looking.
So Darvish is done.
His command is not all that good.
Wanting to hit so bad that you swing at ball 4.
Again, another fastball that's elevated out over the plate.
Some of the players that are lined up for Comeback Player of the Year honors, and if not Comeback Player of the Year, then how about just great bounce-back campaigns? And Keith joins us for a discussion on these players and more. Hi, Keith.
Hey, guys. How you doing this morning? Yeah, we've got 5 guys picked out here that I don't know if they're going to be candidates, but they at least have the opportunity based on where they've been in the past and where they've been in more recent seasons. So we'll run through them here, get your thoughts on each guy's prospects heading into this year. First one, Christian Yelich. Matty, we've talked about him a lot. It feels like, excuse me, every time we talk Brewers, this is the big question. Which Christian Yelich are we getting? You see there he started with back-to-back batting titles and then almost a 100-point drop in batting average. You should say that his on-base percentage is still healthy at 360, so that makes him an above-average hitter on the whole, according to OPS+. But obviously, if you're paying the freight to have him hit in the middle of the lineup, it's just not good enough. And the thing that's concerning, guys, a career-low 117 games played with multiple back issues. So going into his age 30 season, that has to be a little bit of a concern. Where are we at with Yelich?
Well, I sit there and I look, first of all, if you're on this list, it's not a good thing because you haven't performed. It's one thing to be an injured player, to come back from. But I can't give the 234 and even the 360 on base. I get what you're saying about that's kind of healthy. I don't look at that 234 as being an average player. And if you're an MVP, the Milwaukee Brewers cannot advance into postseason with a 230 hitting Christian Yelich. It just can't happen. He's got to be the guy much closer to the MVP. I think he's the key for the Milwaukee Brewers going forward. He's got to get right and do the things that he's capable of doing.
Yeah, and I'll give you some Captain Obvious stuff here. Look, this guy is chewing up so much payroll that anything less than what he did in 2019, and that is to say what he's done the last few years, really sets the team back. And it's unfortunate that Christian seems to be very aware of that.
Right.
Because there are people that feel like he's real deep in his own head, feeling like he's let the team down, and that's kind of furthering the performance issues that he's having on the field. This guy's way too talented, way too conscientious. He's a star. And I think he's a great candidate to bounce back. If anybody needed a clean slate entering 2022, it was Christian Yelich.
Yeah, guys, and I think much like the MVP, if he does bounce back, he's probably a strong candidate to win Comeback Player of the Year because with him doing what he's done the last couple of years, it's a tight 2-team race. If he's the MVP, quality player that he was, I think they're a pretty overwhelming favorite in that division. So,
Agreed.
All right, moving out to the West, guys. Cody Bellinger. We all know the case with him. Let's take a look at his numbers here. Started off hot, obviously a rookie record for home runs, and then he had his MVP season. But the last 2 years, pretty rough, guys. He swung at more than 50% of the pitches he faced last year for the first time in his career. And his contact rate on pitches out of the zone went from 70% to 60%. So you think about Cody Bellinger, obviously. You think about him going down and golfing balls below the zone out for home runs. You think about what he did in the playoffs last year, taking that high pitch way above the zone and doing damage on it. So we know he can do damage when he expands the zone, but that swing rate and the contact rate outside of the zone, I think, speaks to how lost he is with some of these numbers with so much chase. What do we got on Bellinger?
Well, for me, I look at him as a guy that kind of has predetermined that he was swinging in certain at-bats against certain pitchers at certain times. And there's also the other thought I have is it looks like he wants to hit the ball 475 feet instead of 361 feet. Because if you hit a 361 over the 360 mark, it usually counts as a point. And I think he gets into his own head of the swing rate or the chase rate is probably a result of predetermining I'm getting a good pitch right here and I'm going yard. And I'm just letting the dog eat every single time or every single swing. And I think there has to be a case. If I'm not mistaken, on the MVP season, I did a tape on him early in the year. There was times when I saw him choke up this much on the bat. And I don't remember seeing that as of late. It seems like that 1-ball, 2-strike count, he's swinging. He's trying to go there. Far, and I don't think that's going to play.
You know, I am not qualified to kind of evaluate Cody Bellinger the way Bill would or somebody else would that played or plays. I'll say this, though, that his mechanics and his pass at the ball is so unique that when it doesn't work, it probably looks worse than it is. Because when he's going right, you're like, wow, how does the guy make that swing? How does he get to that ball? He's built out of rubber bands because it's like there's nothing but sinew in his body because he's so unique as an athlete. So when it goes great, it's this well-orchestrated kind of symphonic moment. But when it's bad, it looks like he's just a mess. And so I think it's never as bad as it looks with him. And I'm hoping that he bounces back, too.
You know what else doesn't look so good, Matty?
What?
When you go this route and get Cody Bellinger's name tattooed on your arm, you'll notice Matt Beatty there on the right. They DFA'd him this week. So this gentleman's 1 for 2 right now. He is really banking on the Bellinger comeback for the long-term ink prospects of his right arm.
He is, but I can identify with that gentleman because, look, when you're a fan, you don't care about whether it's a superstar or the 26th man on the roster. If I could have gotten Shooty Babbitt's name tattooed on my left butt cheek when I was 11 years old, I would have done it because I loved Shooty Babbitt. I loved him.
There's still time, Matty. Plenty of tattoo shops around here.
He wasn't a star, but he was my guy. Mike Heath, I loved Mike Heath. I would have had Mike Heath on my forehead.
That's a pretty good one.
Yeah.
No Yu Darvish tattoos that we know of, guys, but he is another candidate here. We could also throw Dallas Keuchel into the mix. You see those numbers highlighted there, but the largest ERA increases from 2020 to 2021. Now, stating the obvious, you have to have been pretty good in 2020 to make this list because you need some room to inflate those numbers. So obviously,
this is a high-end all-star pitcher.
Yes, it is, Harold, and we do have that full screen built as it's on the screen right now. So
we got that full screen built?
Yes, Harold, we do. Even with your absence, we got the full screens under control. But guys, Darvish last year, his first 16 starts, a 2.44 ERA, 13-3 team record. His last 14, 6.65. The team was 4-10. He was 1-8. So he had it at some point last year and then lost it. What do we think about Darvish going forward?
Well, I think he'll have it again because I think your comment about if you're on this board, you had to be really good at one time to have that wiggle room. And when you look at the 4.22, I'm not overly like, oh my God, look at that. He still had 199 punch outs as you put up there with the 166 innings. So that'll tell you he's got some swing and miss stuff in there. And that could have been a result of a couple bad pitches right at the wrong time. You get a couple guys on and you hang something and it goes 3-run homer. That hurts a little bit, but I expect this guy to bounce back. I don't know if he's going to be a 2 ERA, but I'm pretty sure he's not a 4.2.
Well, I'll lay out a couple of things in terms of his bio.
Bad bio info, buddy. Bad bio.
You haven't even heard it yet! He'll be 36 in August, and he's got about 2,600 innings in that arm and shoulder. So if somebody is going to be a little bit skeptical over like a return to complete dominance, I get that based on that. But it's still, one of the elite pitchers in our sport. And I don't know what happened where he fell off the cliff in August in particular, but he went from a guy who you could bet every day he was going to go north of his strikeout prop to a guy that you faded every 5 days. And it wasn't pretty down the stretch for him. So another guy that we hope can bounce back.
Yeah, and you think about the timeline around the team, that wasn't the only drama going on with the Padres. Obviously, if you're a frontline pitcher like Yu Darvish or an MVP candidate like Fernando Tatis, you're part of the equation, and the blame's always going to fall on the star players. But a lot of different factors going on in San Diego when his slide kind of started. All right, guys, another big-name guy on the other coast in our backyard, Francisco Lindor. You see here, he started out, as we all recall, with literally the worst month of his career. It's not like
it stinks.
Well, it did stink, Harold, but he's got a long track record, so we're going to give him a little hope here.
History.
May through August, it's not exactly like he lit the world on fire, but by September, when he got back off the IL in August, he did look like his old self. So a couple quick things on Lindor here, guys. He had the highest hard hit rate of his career.
Interesting.
Yes, but coupled with the highest whiff rate of his career. So with the good comes the bad, but he also missed more games last year than he did versus his entire tenure with the Indians. So where are we at with Lindor? Is it the guy we saw in September and the guy who's been one of the great shortstops of his generation in Cleveland, or we have more concern here?
I am genuinely curious for Bill's take on this player. This is interesting to me. What do you got?
Well, to me, I think New York got him last year. I think him coming into New York and that start was so bad, and the fan reactions, and we saw a little bit of interaction between him and the fans, not so necessarily good. I think he tried, in my opinion, way too hard to not be him for some reason coming from Cleveland. And I think he was trying to show everybody in New York, this is why you got me. And I saw him, just to me, more top-step-ish when things were going right. There just seemed to be, okay, I'm here. And I think it ate him up a little bit. Look, New York's eaten up people before. I don't think there's any question about that. And I fully expect Frankie to bounce back in year 2 in New York. I think everything's a little bit different. I think Buck Showalter coming in to manage that club, some of the additions that they've made. I think this guy's going to have a really big year and look like Frankie that he's looked like in Cleveland all those years.
You know, I mean, 6 dominant years in Cleveland as one of the game's elite players, and he's 28 years old now, coming off an uneven debut as a Met. At what point, and I'm just wondering this out loud, I'm not saying this is the case for Lindor, but at what point can you stop banking on the back of the baseball card replication year in and year out? He's an older player. Right. The circumstance is completely different in New York than it was in Cleveland. I will say this, for someone optimistic on Lindor, yes, the track record is good, but so is the supporting cast this year. I mean, can you think of a player who's in the midst of a more ready to win and dominate lineup than he is? Like, he doesn't have to be the guy. He doesn't even have to be one of the 3 or 4 guys for that team to go and for him to post his own numbers.
Well, and look, the back of the card, for one, is you don't stop looking at the back of the card now for Frankie, because I think it's going to be there. And I agree with you. When you come into this mix and some of these additions that have come into play for them, that's what I was saying when he was trying to force himself last year a little bit, like, I am the man. Mm-hmm. You can be the man without saying it. Just go out there and do it. And I really think you're going to see the numbers climb. I think he's going to be a 25, 30 home run guy again. I think he's hitting 280. I think he's going to do everything that they wanted him to do when they got him in the first.
He could be a buy low guy for fantasy league players this year. I would agree. There's more pressure on some of the new guys like Marte and Canna than there would be, or just as much pressure on them as there would be on Lindor. All right, Keith, who do we have to wrap this up? This is fun.
All right, guys, last one. We're heading a little further south in the NL East. Aaron Nola. And the first thing that jumped out to me here, guys, is you see the ERA increase. A Cy Young candidate in the not-too-distant past, but pair him with Zach Wheeler, whose volume was kind of the selling point for his Cy Young candidacy last year. No team in baseball last year had multiple 200-inning pitchers. It's the first time that's ever happened. Obviously comes with a huge caveat of coming off of the COVID season, but with Nola and Wheeler at the top of that rotation, if Nola gets right again, for as much as we talk about the Phillies bullpen, having a couple guys at the top of the rotation that can combine for 400, 450 innings could go a long way to solving that problem. So can Nola be that guy that gets back to where he was a couple years ago, is that horse and the ace? The horse is ace, as our friend Dan Plesac would say, of course. Does he get back to that level?
I think so. Look, I'm a big fan of this guy. I love his presence on the mound. But some of that head drop you just saw right there, he was definitely the victim of throwing middle at the wrong time last year, and the ball was flying out of the yard, and it seemed like to deflate him a little bit, and then it would happen his next outing. He'd get ahead of people. The guy's got too good of stuff. And you see the 180 innings with 223 punchies. And I know this world punches out a little bit more than it used to. This guy is a horse on the mound. I like everything about him, so I know he's going to bounce back.
I like the conviction there. I would say that there's no reason why that can't happen based on his skill set, based on the stage of his career that he's in. He's in his age 28 season. That's the age that Dave Stewart and Bob Welch used to say, and I always quote these guys in this one. That they say, you don't know what you're doing until you're 28 or 29 years old as a starting pitcher in Major League Baseball. That was in the 80s. It's a different game now because now guys are taught just to blow it as hard as they can for 4 innings, and then the sabermetrics will save you from any further disgrace. But Aaron Nola is not one of those guys. He has a lot of art to his craft, and I would agree with Bill. I think he's primed to have a real nice bounce-back year.
Yeah, and I think some of what you guys said about Lindor applies to a lesser extent. A lot of shiny new objects down in Philly. Maybe the conversations change a little, easier for him to kind of get back to what he was with not as much pressure as a year ago.
Excellent. I love it. Hey, Keith, that was fun. And Keith will be back with us a little later on with some trivia. Let's take a break.
Keith knows I love trivia.